Good morning. Hello, Anna, Catherine. Good morning. I'm back in Rimrock. I have to be a little bit quiet because my roommate Tatiana is sleeping. It's very early here, but the sun is coming up. So that's the reason I speak as slightly quiet. But glad to see you all. It has been a few weeks for me, a lot of traveling. I think for 2 weeks in a row, Adam has covered the sessions. And yeah, because one time I was in Vietnam and the other time, I don't remember. I think, did we do it from Mexico City? I think so, yeah. And somewhere is Adam. Welcome, welcome. Okay, so I think everybody is set up. Still people is coming in. Thank you so much for all the translators, for all the people sharing materials in the chat. Now it's funny because I don't speak Russian and I don't speak Ukrainian. And now the chat is full of Russian and Ukrainian. I can just trust that it's going well. But thank you that also for you being here and all the support. Okay, so just keep accepting people coming in. If anybody needs special permissions, raise your hand. And yes, Ola is saying to start the recording. I don't know if that means she's starting the recording or she's suggesting I start the recording. I'm gonna start the recording just in case. Okay. Anybody else? Okay, Adam is there coming from heaven. Look at that. Good to see you, Adam.
You too, man. Good morning.
Good morning. Okay, so yeah, I was telling the audience that you have been leading a few sessions by yourself, and I think really, really well because people get super excited and they comment in the chat and they thank you so much. And so that may mean good things.
Yeah.
So I was hoping, Adam, what I wanted to do today, because this is what happened to me lately.
Mm,
I start realizing the more we go through
mm.
studying these topics, the more I realize the the more I have to learn. Like, and even it's like even very basic things, I realize I don't have yet such a strong foundation
Mhm.
of very important topics that later are gonna help us to go further.
Yeah.
And the particular example I have this time, okay, so anyways, I'll get there in a moment. What happened is I start reading the book, right? Because okay, I
Yeah.
need to learn more content. I need to
Yeah.
strengthen my foundations. So I start doing the good night book club practice. I start reading the book, and then in the very first few debates, I mean, the content we can learn from them is
It's
very,
crazy.
it's a lot, yes.
Yeah.
Even in the debates, we have to be patient as well because of the format. It can
Hmm.
be tiring for some
Hmm.
people if we are not used to it.
Yeah.
But if we hang on it with patience, there's a lot. And even at the section 6, debate number 9, that we're gonna go through, they start talking about the skandhas, the 5 hips, the 12 danas
Ayatanas.
and the 18 ayatanas. And then I just realized that even that it's so basic, I still have a few questions. Like I cannot exactly, although I may know like them as in a list, but
Mm.
I haven't even interiorized them, and
Yeah.
I cannot quite tell the difference, the exact difference between all of them, which is super important for the debates, but also to understand existence itself, because it's one of the ways we can break down um, the categories of existence. So remember we were reviewing the chart. So I thought today we can, what I would like to do is to keep going with debates. I want to encourage all of you to, if you have the book, start using it more. Go and read it time to time. It's going to be a very helpful tool to keep going in our studies. But I think in order to really be able to use the book, we have to be familiar and patient with the debate format. So, in order to keep getting us familiar with it, what I wanted to do today is to use it as a practice. And also, Adam, I did some research about these divisions. And to be honest, I use ChatGPT,
Mm.
which I know it's great, but it's not perfect. Many times it has mistakes.
Mm.
So to kind of do a group review and see if if the information I got, can we agree with it, or there are
Yeah.
things we'll disagree with it.
Hmm.
So for what I would like to do is to do a quick review on the first two debates we have been studying, but then I want to jump into section 5 and section 6 to start like um, maybe going into slightly
Right.
more complex topics, which are still from how to say very basic in the sense that still we are in the very beginning of the book. But then it was here when a few days ago when I stopped into this section that I start having like a lot of I start realizing how the implications of the debates are very deep. Let's put it that
Hmm.
way.
Hmm.
And then we can share our thoughts.
Yeah.
Also, I would like to ask the audience if anybody of you have worked with the debates. Remember a few sessions ago when we were working with them, I was encouraging you to write for every single line something that you think you could learn about it. And even so basic things like, for example, if
Mm.
it says like, um, I don't know, I remember there is this debate that says like, if something is, I don't know, maybe let's just open it up because I'm gonna say something that is not accurate. But it's something in the lines of I don't know, if something is golden, is the r- russet golden color
Yeah.
of manjushri,
Hmm.
it is one of the 8 secondary colors. And then somebody says like, no, not just because uh, to be a secondary color is not necessarily the case to be one of the 8 secondary colors. And then you start learning like, oh, okay, it's like the work we have to do is like of logic deduction.
Hmm.
You come up to
Hmm.
realize that there are more secondary colors
Then
than
what's
the
listed?
ones that are called the 8 secondary colors.
Yeah.
And what I was proposing people to do is to go through this exercise and writing down what you're learning from every line. I'm gonna share my screen. Okay,
Yes.
cool. So for the first two debates that we have reviewed before, I just want to do a quick run. So as a warm up, we get into the mood, and then we start reviewing this part that I'm telling you that the new debate took me to. So just to clarify the exercise that has helped me, that I recommend people to do, let's do this. Kachignare, kadogina, marpoyim pe, cap serna. First, just for good luck, I'm
Mhm.
reading West Chinese. Okay. Suppose someone comes and makes the following claim. If something is a color, it's always red. And here, what I was proposing people is to allow yourself, when we are doing this exercise of debate, for this particular purpose, right? You don't have to do it every time you debate, but just to get ourselves trained, try to question everything you know, even if it seems very, very basic. Because I remember when we talked about it, I was telling you it's like we have to give our beliefs and our ideas, let's certify them.
Mhm.
They may be correct many times, but sometimes they may be incorrect. And even if they were correct, if we certify them, this process that I'm calling certification is gonna allow us to go deeper into understanding how we learn and how we know things. So, for example, here I will say if something is a color, it's always red. Even ask yourself, okay, is red a color?
Mhm.
And it may sound super basic and super taken for granted, but just allow yourself to do these kind of very basic questions about reality and match. Okay, red, yes, okay, red is a color. We can proceed. Let's consider the color of a white shell. I suppose it's red. Why do you say that? Because it's a color. And you ask yourself, okay, is it true that the color of a white shell it's a color? Yes. Is it true that the white color the sorry, is it true that the color of a white shell is red? No. Okay, let's proceed. But you're having every statement checked, right? You either certify them or this has a not disregard, but like discard
Mhm.
these ideas. Then another thing, it's very helpful to understand at some point is the structure that happens in the original language, in the West Chinese Tibetan language, because a lot of things that um, you can read in the English are additions for us as readers to understand the flow. But I think it's also great if we can understand the flow, getting so familiar with the Tibetan that then the English that was added just makes sense. But to understand how it works in the original language and how it works once in English it's added, I think that's really great.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
going to be much easier for those of you who are actually learning Tibetan, which I really, really recommend. But it comes at the correct time, right? If you are just, I don't know, starting with these topics and maybe what I'm saying is like it could take a few years for you to even develop an interest in it or yeah, some time to start digesting it enough for it to make sense. But just planting the seed, it can help a lot. Okay, so just because something is a color, it doesn't mean it has to be red. Funny enough, this is what the opponent is saying. And even in the statement number 5 here, it's already the first contradiction that he himself is doing, right? He's contradicting his first statement. But remember that in the debate, there has to be controversy. Otherwise, there is not much to debate about.
Hmm.
So okay, we have to throw some controversy. And then our school, and remember that in these debates, we are standing for school number 2. Many times we have talked about a few differences between the different schools regards Pramana, and not only about schools, but between exponents, or yeah, exponents of the same school. Even sometimes there is differences. So just to say, but here we are wearing our second school hat.
Hey, Juan,
Yes,
I hate to stop you. Proponents.
proponents. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah. I can see just for the translators. Yeah.
Excellent. Yes, proponents. Yes.
Mhm.
In Spanish, we say exponents, exponentes.
All right.
So, uh, proponents in English. Juan Loan has joined the session.
Hi.
All right. Um, so, okay.
Mhm.
Number 6. Then the opponent says, okay, okay, okay. In that case, I disagree that the color of a white shell is a color. And you keep doing that exercise like, okay, is the color of a white shell a color? Yes, it has to be a color. Okay, let's keep going, but it has to be a color. Okay. Then our debater, our school proponent says, if you disagree, let's consider again the color of a white shield. It is a color. Why do you say that? Because it's white. And then you check, okay, is white also a color? Yes, white is a color. Okay, let's keep going. Okay. Ah, no. The opponent says,
Yes, ma'am.
huh?
No, sorry. Ava
Oh,
was asking a question.
okay.
I'll mute myself for a
Good. No, no, no worries. It's all good. Okay. I disagree, it's white. The white color, the color of a white conch shell is not white. That's what the opponent is saying. And this process in your mind is very healthy. So you kind of learn how to translate statements into implications, if that makes sense. Because later, when we go into prasangikas, like ridiculous implications, having developed this ability is going to be very helpful to
second.
understand what's the implication of what somebody's doing and being able to put it into words in your mind. So here, when he say, I disagree that it's white, the implication, just like expanding into the statement, will be to say, I disagree that the color of a white conch shell is white. Okay, so the guy says, okay, if you disagree, let's check it out again. Let's consider again the color of a white seashell. Yes, it is white. Why do you say that? Because it's identical to the color of a white seashell. So color white, it's identical to the color of a white seashell. Therefore, we can say that the color of a white seashell is white, because white is identical to the color of a white seashell. You see, it may sound so redundant, but it's very important to understand the structure and the
Hmm.
logic behind it.
Yeah. Juan,
Yeah,
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 you
yeah.
know,
Listening.
how do I put it? So this first debate, yeah,
Yeah.
you can get, and I think this is what you're saying, is that you can, there's multiple levels, right? And depending on really how you're analyzing the debate, you can get something. This is going to be hard for the translators, but there used to be this candy in the United States. We called it a jawbreaker, like your
Mm-hmm.
jaw. right? It's a
Mhm.
jawbreaker. And they were these kind of huge balls, right? And sometimes you could sit there and put them on your like put them in your mouth and you could I mean, they would last for 2 weeks, and they had all these different layers, right? And I tend to think that these debates are kind of like that. And the longer that you sit with them, the more that you find there's in each of them. And I think the central thing that I'm trying to convey here is that at the surface level, okay, the most evident level, this debate is meant to teach you the format of debate, right? It's meant to show you how to ask questions, right? How to disagree with somebody, and what are because there's only two ways you can respond, right? But there are many different ways that you can ask the question, right? So at the surface level of this candy, right, the candy of this debate is meant to really get you familiar with how to debate. Yeah. So I- it's my suggestion, and you don't have to take it, but my suggestion is to use this first debate to really learn how to debate and then maybe sit with it, right? But that's not to say that anything that one is bringing up here isn't important. I just think it should be noted that in all the texts that I've studied in relation to this first debate, its primary goal is to teach you how to debate. Sorry, man.
No, no, no. It's
I
okay.
thought that
Thank
was
you, thank you,
it's
thank
kind of
you.
important.
And that is true. And what I think is like we should also talk more about how to debate, not necessarily using the debates, but as a topic in general soon.
Yeah, you've
But
got
yeah, sure, 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 sure. It
yeah,
is it is true that that's one of the goals. And yeah, you can. I think I will say just use them both in both ways. Sometimes
yeah,
just take it to understand
yeah,
the structure and the flow.
yeah,
Sometimes dig deeper into each one of the lines, and you will
yeah.
find great
Well,
benefit from both of them. Really.
I think it's kind of you can kind of look at it this way, like learning how to debate is like a shovel, right?
Mm.
And then once you have the shovel, then you can start to dig deeper,
Mhm, mhm.
if
Makes
that makes
sense.
sense,
Makes
right?
sense.
Yeah,
Makes sense. So, having said that, I think probably the point has been made, and what I'm gonna do is, without stopping much, just gonna flow, because otherwise we're not gonna get into the actual place where I wanna get today. So this is just gonna be a warm up, and as I say, my idea is that you all be able to use the book by yourselves at home, and you can from there come up with your own questions, and maybe come here to the Pramana sessions and share your questions in a similar way that I'm gonna do today as an example. But then if you feel like doing that, we could all benefit from it, because I've been saying that I like to see this as a lab session when we all come together and we share our questions and discuss about it. And if somebody also has exercises or ideas that have come up with these debates, please share them in the chat and we can stop and talk about it. I'm just gonna flow from here until we finish this first and second debate, okay? If there are questions, you can put them in the chat. If you say like, no, no, stop, I didn't get that, feel free. Okay, so the opponent, the Kachik, when we reach at this point, it says, okay, okay, forget everything that I say. I was confused, but now I'm clear. He said, okay, I apologize. I agree with what you say first. It is red. And remember, what he's saying is, I agree with what you say first. The color of a white seashell is red. Now, this is what he's saying. Okay. If you agree with our original statement, then let's consider Again, the color of a white seashell. It is not red. Why do you say that? Because it's white. And I like how it's so simple, but it's
Mhm.
logical. It
Yeah.
is not red. Why do you say it's not red? Because it's white.
Yeah.
Simple, right?
Yeah.
Okay, just because something's white doesn't mean it cannot be red. Okay, let's say you say it's not necessarily the case, but it is necessarily the case that if something is white, it's not red, because it's impossible for one thing to be entirely white and entirely red
Mhm.
at the same time.
Mhm.
And probably you know what I'm gonna say here, but I find it very cool when you start noticing that adding a few words gives you deeper information to make sure if something is true or not. Now they add the word entirely because something could be white and red at the same time. And Adam has been talking about this candy that is red and white, right? But adding the
Mm.
word entirely makes a different statement. So let's keep going. No, no, I disagree that it's impossible for one thing to be entirely white, entirely red. Okay, let's say you disagree, but yes, it is impossible. Why? Why do you say it's impossible? Because being entirely white and being entirely red are two contradictory things. Okay, okay, okay. I didn't understand what you're saying.
Hey, one,
Let's
did you
change
see
the debate. Huh?
did you see we try to slow it down just a little bit?
I know, but I will.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah.
When I'm sharing the screen, I'm not seeing the chat.
No, it's yeah, that's why
Great.
I hate to stop you, but I
No,
think
no, no,
just
no
for
worries.
yeah.
It's a great strategy to don't have to look at the chat.
Yeah.
Just kidding. Okay, so version is this now apparently this is kind of almost the same basic logic, but using a slightly different examples. And as Adam say, the routes of questions vary a little bit. Okay, let's make the same point. What point of the contradictions? What contradiction we are checking this time? That to be entirely one color is contradiction of being entirely a different color at the same time. Okay, let's consider the color of Buddha named Ratnakara, the source of jewels. This is when I was saying like, okay, and you write, okay. What I learned from this line, I learned that there is a Buddha called Ratnakara, and the translation of that is the source of jewels in English. I suppose it's red. Why you say it's red? Because red is a color. By now you can guess that Ratnakara is not red, just assuming. But also sometimes be careful with assuming things. But
Hmm.
sometimes you have to trust it too. Okay, just because it's a color doesn't mean it's red. But you say if something is a color, it has to be red. You already say that.
Kalekakpo
Kaleka.
means slowly, slowly.
Okay.
Sorry, dude.
No, no, no.
Yeah, I just see
Don't
Kaja.
apologize. It's
Yeah.
good. I agree with you. I disagree that the color of the Buddha name, Source of Jewels, is a color. That's new. That's new. And it's very bold and I like it. And it's crazy. It's really crazy, but it's fun actually. I don't know. If we do it with the right attitude, I think we can learn to laugh when somebody tells us like crazy statements. Now this person is saying that the color of the Buddha is not a color. Okay, let's
Mhm.
check it out. It is a color. Why do you say that? Because it's yellow. Oh, so I guess you're saying that yellow is a color. Yes, I'm saying yellow is a color. I disagree that the color of this Buddha is yellow. Okay, if you disagree,
Are you gonna
let's
put
go
nutmeg on
back
there?
and check it out. The color of Ratnakara, it is yellow. Why do you say that? Because it's identical to the color of the Buddha name, Ratnakara. Interesting. If you read the book, you will see many footnotes, but I'm not gonna stop this time there. But basically, they are saying that yellow is identical to the color of the Buddha name, source of youth. Okay. I see what you mean. I was confused. Sorry, I apologize. But now I'm clear. I agree with what you say first. Yes, the color of Ratnakara is red. Okay, I'm gonna show you that it is not red. Why do you say it's not red? Because it's yellow. Ah, but not because something is yellow, it means that it cannot be red. Yes, it does, because it's completely is contradictory to be for something to be entirely red and entirely yellow at the same time. Yay, okay. From debate 1 and 2 all the way to debate 8, you're gonna learn a lot of things, including this flow.
Hey,
Uh,
Juan, can you go back to the last slide for just a second?
Here.
Yeah. There's something that came up in the second book in Destroying Darkness
Mhm.
that Geshe working with me on. There's a point at which KJJ makes sure to say that if something is contradictory, it has to be considered for this, for who and at what time,
Mhm.
right? So it's not the case that excuse me, it is the case that it's contradictory for something to be entirely red and entirely white, entirely red and entirely yellow at the same time for the same person, right?
Mhm.
However, it's not contradictory for something to be entirely red and yellow at different times. Makes sense, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So it's something that wasn't brought up here in the Dura, but it is something to be considered because what about for a blind person, obviously,
Mhm.
uh, or two different people looking at the same ball would have maybe maybe we could share different karma, and I see the ball as entirely yellow, and you see the ball as entirely red. So sorry, I just thought that might be interesting to think about.
For sure, for sure. And I think Geshe, the way I remember he explaining that example lately is when he say that um, yeah, there can be a dad who's blind, colorblind,
Hmm.
and the kid, he's arguing that the ball is blue, and the kid is telling him that the ball is green, and they are both, because ultimately because of their seeds, they're both experiencing the same object at the same time, but in a different way.
And they're both correct. They're
Mhm.
both,
In
yeah,
a way, well, yeah,
yeah.
that's a very interesting
These
thing.
are both, would you could consider them both accurate perceptions.
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Yeah, I think that opens up a
Yeah.
lot of questions for me, because just
Uh,
because you see something in a way, it means it is that way.
yeah. Well,
If I am colorblind and I see the ball as blue, does it means that the ball is blue? Ah, and that's a very interesting.
well, take it.
Or it means that I see that ball as blue.
Yeah. Well, take it all the way to ask the highest question, right? And I don't know the answer to this. I'm sure we could all think about it and find the answer, but the question just came to my mind. Can somebody see a ball, and can that ball be not self-existent and self-existent at the same time, depending on your seeds?
Uh-huh. That's my
Ava
point.
says, Ava says no. Ava immediately said no.
Yeah.
Uh, Now, I think this is interesting because we know that there's another way you can separate reality into deceptive and ultimate truths.
Mhm.
So, in one way, the person who is seeing the ball as who has an intellectual or an understanding that the ball is not coming from its own side. Talking about non-Aryas and non-Arhats. Okay, that may be different. um, and maybe we're jumping off into the deep end, but I think this is where ultimately this is where all these topics should be leading you is to not you. I think what Juan was saying earlier applies here, and that we're talking about colors, and one of the ways we need to consider it is that when you wake up and you get out of your bed every morning and you open your eyes, the first thing that you throw yourself into is colors and shapes. And that's generally what people identify as being their world, is what you see, is this is my world. So the study of color and shape should have you asking questions about the objects that you perceive most commonly in your experience, right? So you're and one you know, if we go into my time, it's not an issue at all. I think this is probably a good flow right now. Um, so when you get out of your bed in the morning, and as you walk through your day and go to your job, or as you look at the computer right now, most commonly, people identify color and shape as being their world, right? And I think some people have said it's like 80% of your experience, right? You identify with being colors and shapes. So yes, this is good, right? Um, on a but I think where these topics are ultimately going to lead you is to start asking questions about uh, the nature of your experience. Not just, okay, can we identify color and shape, but can we talk about the nature or the essence of those colors and shapes? So can you see a ball that is red and 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 it not be self-existent? Can you see a ball that is red and it also be self-existent? And if two different people are sharing different views, one is seeing the ball as being self-existent and one is seeing the ball as being not self-existent, what's what, how, is it accurate? Uh, so, and that's kind of where I was trying to lead. So
Yeah, I know, and I think it's
yeah,
really,
thank you.
really interesting because the topics that come into my mind by listening to you is like there is such thing as an apramana, meaning
Mhm,
incorrect perceptions,
mhm,
which are still perceptions,
mhm,
meaning that we can perceive things in an incorrect way. There is something like it's a possibility of perceiving something which is not accurate. And one of the classical examples is like when we have something, let's say, working against the our power sense. Like, for example, a classical example is like there is dust between us and the object we are perceiving, seeing,
mhm,
let's say, and we
mhm.
see the object in a incorrect way. And so I was wondering, what if color blindness could be considered one of these apramanas, misperceptions,
Mhm,
because there is another kind of pramana called convention, right? We have talked about this idea of
mhm,
convention.
mhm,
It's like if 90% of the human population by convention they have agreed that the ball is red, not just because the blind color person, the colorblind person comes and claims he's blue, it means that you know what I'm trying to say? It's like if the colorblind person calls the office and it says like, oh yeah, I left the blue keys for you on the table. And then everybody in the office are like, no, we don't see the blue keys. Yes, they are on the table. I left the blue keys for you on the table. And it's like, no, no, we don't find the blue keys. In the table, there's only the green keys and the red keys. No, no, I left the blue keys in the table. So you see the problem because out of convention, it may not, it's difficult to argue that just because somebody sees things in a way, it means that that's the way things are. But at the same time, it's almost like the definition
Mhm.
of things to be. Like things depend on the person in order to be established.
Mhm.
Things depend on the seed carrier. Can we say that?
Yeah.
The person who carries the seeds in order to be what they are. But then I will add these two ideas, maybe to just think about it later. A Pramana, what, because once we'll argue like, no, no, I saw my dog for a moment. My dog, oh, a classical example, the mouse in the road. Geshe talks about it. You see something going on, you're driving, and you believe it's a mouse. You think you killed the mouse, then you stop, you go down. Oh, it was only a leaf. Some people may argue, I mean, you could say, no, it's because it was a mouse, because you had the seeds to see a mouse, but then your seeds change radically and your whole world changed, and now you realize it's a leaf. I don't buy that version, but
Mhm.
it's a version. But anyways, just to add to this idea, like apramanas, convention, and existence. That's what we are doing here. We are trying to figure it out. Okay, so maybe Adam, give me 5 more minutes to
Mm.
at least go, and if you want to take it from there, it will be great
Yeah.
if you can help me to see if what I find about the categories is correct,
Yeah.
or if you want to jump to something else, that's also
Mhm. Mhm.
fine. So here is when I find this thing, like when we come into debate 8, it's already going more elaborated, even in the language they use. So it goes like, okay, somebody comes and says the following claim. If something is form, it must necessarily be a color. Okay, let's consider the smell of sandalwood. Are you saying it's a color? Why do you say that? Because it's a form. To me, it was interesting that it says a form, not form. And maybe it
Mhm.
has to be with the difference between, if you say its form, it will have to be the definition of form. A form, it's implying that it's an example of of form. And now here we will be tapping into Chichedra in a way. Okay, this is what took my attention, that I thought like, okay, I really have to learn this well if I want to be able to move forward. Check what it says. It's the footnote. The word form in Sanskrit rupa, in Tibetan suk, it can be used in three different ways. Number one, it can refer to the first of the five hips or components of the person. In that case, it will mean the physical component of the person and their world. I already have a lot of questions, but I'm not going to stop there. The second way we could be using the word form is the first of the 12 doors of sense, in which case it will refer to the object of the awareness of the eye, colors and shapes. So form could also mean colors and shapes. And the third one, it's the first of the 18 categories. Oh, the 18 datus. So it's 12 ayatanas and 18 datus. I had it mixed, imagine. In
Hmm.
which case it refers to the object of the sense power of the eye and the awareness based upon it. So it's like, apparently, it's like the eye, the object that the eye is seeing, and the awareness or consciousness that arises from this contact. The various arguments depends on a confusing overlap of the terms here. So imagine we have to be aware in during the debate that when they say form, they could be referring to any of these three. And if we don't understand very clearly what's the difference and similarities between these three, we're going to be totally lost in the debate. I was telling some of my friends that to me it's very difficult to argue in English because it's not my first language. So when you have a real argument where emotions are involved, it's crazy to try to think fast and to speak accurately and to move quickly, which I've seen for whatever weird reason. It seems to be very important to, under this pressure of an argument, establish your ideas um, effectively. It seems that an emotional component is important there. And I think in debate it's the same. So
Hmm.
the better, the more clear we have our topics, the better we're going to be able to do it. I'm not going to, the debate keeps going, but what I wanted is to check this with you, Adam. Let me know if you want to address this or not.
Mm.
I just got this copy of the five skandhas, the 12 datus, and the 18 ayatanas. But
Mhm.
apparently it's the other way around, right? It's not
Yeah.
even the 18 ayatanas, it's the 18
It's the
datus
18 datus. Yeah.
and the 12 ayatanas. This is an example when I think I asked ChatGPT and ChatGPT didn't correct me. ChatGPT let me go still believing in my own lies. See, so be careful when
Yeah.
you use AI still, but at the same time, I think it's great. It's a great tool, but don't trust it 100%. This is a good example. I
Mm.
don't know. You want to talk about this, Adam, or should we move on to a different topic?
Mm. You know, yeah, I think we could, I mean, we might move on.
Okay.
Um,
Okay,
the
and on my end, what I
yeah,
propose is I'm for next session, I'm gonna dig and investigate, try to have this very clear, to share it and present it next session, and to have a big distinction of and similarities comparison between these three categories.
yeah.
Okay, so that's gonna be my homework, and if yeah, I'll pass the plane as Geshe says to you, Adam.
All right. I'll try not to crash and burn. Uh, so I think where Juan's going is a very beautiful place, and it says kind of how I think Juan and I envisioned things would go is he would focus on maybe the content from the perspective of the Dura, the collected topics, and that I would try to focus more on the topics from my second book, which is focusing mainly on the seven books of Master Dharmakirti. The collected topics, as we all know, are topics that do come from Master Dharmakirti's works, but K-Drip J's look is a more in-depth look at how do you use what you learn in the Dura to explore Master Dharmakirti's works in a more deep way. Um, I see Janet has a question. Which school is the second school? So we're talking about uh, the sutrists, um, also known as the Dodepas, uh, also the Sautrantika school, um, if that helps. So the Sautrantika school, the Dodepas, or the Sutrists. Um, where Juan is going, and the reason I wanted to state again why Juan was going to cover the Dura um, in the collected topics, and I was going to focus on different uh, on how do we look more deeply at what Juan is presenting. Yeah. Um, but I also promised everyone that we would spend some time learning the mechanics of debate. And how do we debate? And when Juan is presenting these debates, I thought maybe it would be good uh, to go through and practice from week to week, debating the things that we learn. I'm trying to speak very slowly. Am I speaking too slowly? Is it okay? Yeah. Okay. Um, so we need to have tools, right? The most basic tool that we can have as debaters is something called mushi musum. Okay. Has everyone heard Geshe Michael present mushi musum in a very basic way, right? Is everyone kind of familiar? Okay. I'm getting some head nods. Okay. So, um, Geshe Michael, I want to say it's in the second class of course one. I got some balloons there. The second class of course one um, of the ACI courses, what are called the foundational courses now. Um, yeah, Geshe Michael spends maybe the first 2 or 3 minutes talking about Mushi Musum. Um, okay, so Mushi, um, I'm going to use some technical terms, and we will I'll introduce them and then we'll talk more deeply about what they mean. Okay. So we're going to spend the next week to maybe 2 weeks focusing on what is Mushi and what is Musum. And we'll go through and have some practical examples that you can use to either debate with yourself, or if you have debate partners that you may be able to find in your city, or if you have somebody that you'd like to practice with online, I'll give you some examples that you can use to get familiar with the format. Some of them will be practical things like dogs and pets, right? So if something is a dog, right, is there also is there also an example of a dog which is a pet? Yeah. And is there something which is an example of something which is neither a dog nor a pet, right? These will be practical examples, right? Ways that you can use things that make sense. And then we will start to look deeper, right? About uh, maybe arias and arhats, okay? And how do those two things compare, right? And so we will have if I use the term dharma, right? Um, Examples that are more related to dharma. Okay. So things in our real life, things that are practical, and then things that would apply to our study and our meditation practice. Okay. So we'll start to look at things like non-existence. We'll look at we'll look at can everybody give me an example of the let's say the most classical example of something which doesn't exist?
Rabbit horns.
Yeah, well, yeah, totally. That's very yeah, very, very classic. I'm gonna I'm gonna put it in the chat here. Your blonde hair. Yeah, it's not existent. Yeah. Ava says monsters don't exist. So maybe unicorns, right? Or something called a Pegasus, right? A horse with wings. Ava just said unicorns do exist. So, but here, I put this in the, yeah, two-headed purple elephant. But I'm looking at something that is the maybe one of the greatest object, if not the single most important meditation object that you will ever take. Okay. This might be the most important thing that you can meditate on. What does it say in the chat? Yeah, on, right on the head, right on the money. Yeah, emptiness, right? So, what things are empty of? Okay. And these are non-existent things, right? The gotcha is something which has never existed, will never exist, and doesn't currently exist, right? So this is probably the most important example of something that we can think of. But we will look at how non-existence compares to existence, right? These are very beautiful things that we can learn from Mushi Musum, okay? Um, And why would we use Mushi Musum as a meditation topic or as a tool to explore the things that Juan is bringing up? Okay. A, when you define something, okay, because first, if you're going to compare something, okay, Mushi Musum, I have to start a little, I have to go back even further. Okay. So, what is Mushi Musum? Okay. Mushi means four. Okay. So, shi means four, and mu means like a possibility. Okay. Musum means three possibilities. So, it's a game where you take two things and you compare them. Okay. And they can either relate in three ways or four ways. Okay. And how the it may not make sense now, but what will happen as you study this further is you will understand that when something compares in three ways, or if it compares in four ways, will tell you a lot about how that thing exists. Okay. So when we look at let's just take for example mushi, excuse me, musum. Musum means three possibilities. Okay. If I say that all apples are fruits, okay,
Yeah.
is this true? Ava says no. All apples aren't fruits.
Oh yeah, yeah. All apples are fruits. I
Yeah,
thought the
okay.
other way around.
No, yeah, totally. So if I say all fruits are apples, uh-uh. Okay. So the way you think about it, okay, is does the way those two categories, okay, and you want to step into Chi Chedrock, this is how you do it. Because what you are talking about are categories, okay? You're talking about apples and you're talking about fruits, right? So how would apples and fruits compare? Okay. And we have to look at, are all apples fruits? Yes. Are all fruits apples? No. Right? Can we come up with an example of something that is both a fruit and an apple? Okay. Well, what about green apples? Okay. Or in the US, my favorite apple is called a Honey Crisp apple. They're amazing. Okay. So you come up with specific example, okay, of something that is both. And we will go into it deeper. Okay. I'll tell you why and how you need to be specific in your examples. But can we also come up with something which is neither a fruit and neither an apple? For some reason, I'm thinking about a goat. No reason. There's no relationship. Okay. But you come up with an example of something which is neither a fruit nor an apple. Okay. Now, why is this important and how does this apply to Chi Chedrock? Okay. And then we will, I think we have 15 more minutes. Okay. So why may this be important? First, okay, what are you comparing? I'm going to ask you, yeah, hard work and money. Huang, this is a great example. Okay, this is perfect examples. Okay, so what are you doing when you compare two things? Well, first, if you're going to compare as apples and fruits, you have to have a clear definition of what an apple is. You have to have a clear definition of what fruits are. Okay, because if you don't have a clear definition, you will not be able to talk about or compare those two things. Okay. So what you're doing is you're defining what I would say is the boundary of that category. Okay. What all exists in these categories, okay? And do things that exist in category A apply to category B, right? So I gave you an example earlier of non-existence, okay? Right? So you have to be able to define non-existence, and you have to talk about what would it mean to be non-existent, okay? Can something be non-existent? Well, first you have to be talking about an object, okay? Do you see what I'm saying? This is crazy stuff, okay? So in order for something to even have the property or the quality of being non-existent would mean that it would have to be something that exists, okay? Because non-existing things can have no qualities, okay? So when we start to go into these things deeper, we will use Juan's categories of existence to talk about them, okay? Because as Juan has given you the categories of existence, he has defined everything that you can see, hear, smell, taste, or touch, and also think about, okay? If you go through the categories of existence deeply, there should be nothing that you can't describe, okay? And nothing that you can't accurately describe, okay? This means that from here on out, you will never find yourself in a conversation that you can't speak in an authoritative way about. Does that make sense? Okay. Somebody starts talking to you about colors. Somebody starts talking to you about emotions or feelings. Somebody starts talking to you about non existence or mental images. You have all the keys to discuss it with them properly and accurately. Okay. And the foundation of that is learning how to compare these objects. Okay. That's why Mushi Musum is so important. And that's why it's the first game and the first tool that they teach you when you walk on to the debate ground. Okay. The first thing. All right. They make you memorize the text that Juan is going through. And then they teach you Mushi Musum, which is how to debate them first. Okay. Then you start going into the, you know, uh, karokiana, karok, yeah. Then you start going into the, you start going into colors. Okay. So we can talk about form. Okay. And then we can talk about like, I have a list of examples here. Okay. I'm going to ask some people, um, just basically, okay. Um, what about visible objects, right? Things that you can perceive with the consciousness of the eye and form. How would those two things compare? Visible objects and form. Now, I can, because I've done this, I can tell you there are three possibility. Okay. And from now on, whenever we talk about Mushi Musum, whenever you give me an answer, you can just say 3P or 4P. You look in the chat. Okay. 3P means musum, 4P means mushi. Okay. If you want to use uh, mu musum, that's 3P. Mushi is 4P. Okay. So you can answer either way. All right. But basically, if the relationship goes one way, it's 3P. It's musum. Okay. If the relationship goes both ways, then that's mushi. Okay. So we have one example. I'm going to say things that you can see, visible objects, and form. Okay. How would those two things compare? Does the relationship go one way, like apples and fruits? Apples and fruits also go one way, right? Because all apples are fruits, but not all fruits are apples. Okay. Right? Do you see why I say the relationship goes one way? Does that make sense? Okay. Yeah. So if we apply that, yeah, 3P. This is Musum. Thank you, Irina. Irina. Is it Irina or Irina? Um, okay. I like to get people's names correct. So if I ask you and I say Irina, it still doesn't help, but thank you. um, okay, what about okay, yeah, what about visible objects and form? Does the relationship go one way? I'll lead you through it again. Okay? Look, all things that you can see with your eye are visible objects. Okay? And all visible objects are form. There's nothing that is a visible object that is not form. However, not all form is a visible object. So the relationship goes one way, and that means that it's 3P. Sorry to disappoint everybody, right? Because what you would be saying is the same thing to 3P. Let's go back out. If I say, and what I'll do is next week I will have slideshow for this so that you can see it. Okay. And that's probably easier to learn than me just talking. Okay. So if I give you some graphics about how these different things relate. Okay. Um, but we're just trying to introduce the idea today because if Juan wants to go into the mechanics of debate and we're starting to look at these things and the collected topics, you have to have these tools to start to look at them. Okay. Like Juan today said, okay, are all things are all things that are color form? This is one of the things. And second, his opponent said, no, but what about the smell of sandalwood? You see what
One,
I'm saying? He
one,
gave an object,
it's
he gave
one.
an,
It's not one.
Yes.
please, if somebody has a question, please speak up. You're not going to offend me. If you have something to say, please. And I want you to interrupt if it doesn't make sense. Okay. Uh, it tells me that you're listening. Okay. Um, so yeah. So no, 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 Ula. Yeah. Okay. Um, so does everybody understand why and how Mushi Musum is going to be so powerful? Okay. Yeah. Ava says no. So it's my job to help her understand why these things are important. Okay. My job as a dad. And she learned the first debate. She memorized the first debate, Ava, when we were hiking. Yeah, she said she doesn't want to say it right now. But this is one of the things we do when we go climbing mountains is dad makes her memorize debates. Um, so, um, okay. So I'll give another example. Okay. We have fruits and apples so far. We have visible objects and form. Okay. And what about tables and man-made objects? See, I know right off the bat, I can just go boop, 3P. Yeah. Why? Why? Because there are some man-made objects which are not tables, right? Does everybody see how when you do it a few times, it should be very you should get very quick at it. Okay. So we have things which are tables that are man-made objects, but some man-made objects are, are not tables, right? Well, Ula says that not all tables are man-made objects. I suppose you could have a stump, but yeah, wouldn't you need to cut the tree to sit on it? I'm not sure. If somebody can give me an example of something that is a table but is not a man-made object, I'd be very open to hearing it. Um, However, robot made. Yeah, she's got a good point. But the robot, as a secondary consequence, was made from, right, a human. Now, this is a very interesting thing because just today I had this thought for a long, long time, but I actually, when I was waking up to come to class this morning, I was listening to some news and there was a discussion. Anyways, it left me thinking, why do we divide things between being man-made and being synthetic? Excuse me. If I say something's organic or if I say something is synthetic, right? Organic means made by nature. Synthetic means made by humans, right? So you should be able to take and put all things within those two categories. Okay. So, I mean, I can't think of an example of something which is neither. And the reason that I say this is because then if something was man-made and we could consider ourselves natural creatures, right? Wouldn't that also make synthetic things organic? Look, it's not, I don't think it's that important of a question. Okay. Um, but it's a different way you can think about it. Okay. So, yeah, thank you, Juan. Uh, yeah. Okay. So what about this? What if Juan just put a debate in the chat? Okay. So what about let's instead of going sound and being matter, right? Let's do that. Okay. What is the relationship between sound and matter? Would that be 3P or 4P?
Sorry, Adam. I just put it in the chat because people were asking about the definition of form,
Oh,
and I
right.
just put them there
I see.
with information about
Now,
three different ways of using the
mhm.
word form.
Yeah.
And in the debate, it actually they give you a definition of form and a
Yeah.
definition of matter. That's
No,
why I share it as the
Juan,
definitions.
maybe something you want to do for next class is go into the Dura and go to the Wrong Luke section. Okay.
Mhm.
And print out that Wrong Luke section and memorize the definitions and the divisions.
Mm.
Okay. If you find time. Now, I'll tell you what, I would say that would probably go for everybody here. Okay. So what I'll do is I'll cut out the Wrong Luke section from the first chapter of the Dura. I'll put that in the Telegram or the WhatsApp, And if you really want to start using mushi musum, I would memorize those definitions and those divisions. It's not a lot, okay? Maybe 20 minutes, a half hour, okay? But that will give you the opportunity to start using mushi musum quickly, okay? Like Juan was saying, um, and I think the idea here, Juan was saying in debate, there's a lot of pressure, right? If you take too long to answer on the debate ground, they start taunting you. Oh, they'll start making these sounds, and everybody on the debate ground will start to say, "Oh, oh, he's not answering quickly." Um, and I think one of the reasons is obviously to make your mind sharp and quick, but on another level, when you have a problem in your life, like you find out you have cancer, okay, or somebody is yelling at you in the grocery line, right? Your instant reaction is to do what? Is to scream back, right? Your emotions get very caught up, okay? So if you can train the mind to react with truth through debate, right? You learn how to answer almost like breathing, okay? You don't have to think about breathing, do you? It's part of the autonomic nervous system. It's something that happens automatically. And if you can learn to give answers of truth, like you breathe, right? Without thinking, okay? That will serve you well when the shit hits the fan, you know? When it gets really difficult, okay? You don't have to think about how you should be looking at the situation. It is an automatic reaction because you have trained your mind. Okay. This is called Riklam. This is called the path of reasoning. Okay. And they say that once you get very, very good at the topics that we're going to discuss, right, that you will generate in your mind something called the path of reasoning. Okay. And once you generate that path of reasoning, that is actually the door to emptiness. Okay. But you have to be studying these things and you have to get used to training your mind about how to think about these different categories, right? So that what Juan was saying will apply in your personal life. Okay. It's not just for debate. It's about like, yeah, how do you handle when your daughter is, making a cat fort? She's been making a fort or a little castle and like just right behind me. And she's been trying to, yeah, handle the husband, Huang. Yeah. She's been trying to trap the cat in the castle. And there's been a lot of noise. And there were a couple times where I wanted to turn around and say, sweetheart, you got to give me some time here. Can you just, but then I realized, she's 6 years old and Zoom is really good about canceling out the background noise. So I had to remember that she's totally fine doing what she needs to do. And I'm getting better at it. I'm getting better. Um, anyways, so next week, I think I'm going to follow Juan's lead. Okay. Like Juan is the dancer. Okay. And I'm going to follow his lead, okay? And I think that this is probably a good place for us to slow down on the um, on the second book, okay? And we're going to look at how do we develop more tools to look at what we're going to study in the future, okay? I've gone over 5 minutes. Okay. Um, but I did want to remind you all that this was part of the course that we said we were going to give you. Okay. Juan was going to do the collected topics. And then I told you at some point we were going to learn the mechanics of debate and how to debate, right? So, what I would like to see from all of you over the coming months is for you to be debating like the monks would on the debate ground. Okay. And that's what we're going to go through, and we're going to train ourselves in. Okay. But thank you all for coming. That was 5 minutes over.
Okay, thank you, Adam, as well. And the translator, as usual, the people recording, Gina and Adam as well.
Love you guys, man. Glad you're all coming back. I'm starting to feel like we're a small family now.
Yeah, yeah, it's very cool to have some time. I mean, what can I say? Now that I have the chance to do it some other times of the day,
Mhm.
like really it affects what time of the day you are doing it, but each one of them
Yeah.
has its perks and its challenges.
Yeah, it's true.
But it's cool. It's cool. It's really cool to be able to find the time, get together, and just talk about these things. And I
Hmm.
will keep encouraging the audience to type your own questions. And also, if you feel interested in certain topics, I encourage you to do your own research.
Hmm.
And then, whatever you find, either answers or more questions, which is often the case, bring it
Hmm.
here. Feel free to, you can also contribute. Maybe one day we can also give other people 10 minutes or stuff to present if
I
they
think
want to.
that's a great idea. I
Yeah,
think
right.
that's a great idea.
Yeah. So if anybody wants to also start practicing to present topics or share with the audience, I think it's an open space and there's time and place to do it.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. So
Cool. See,
yeah,
see you then.
if you guys want homework, I'll put the Rang Look section, okay, in the Telegram and WhatsApp, okay, and just if you want to, you can go through and look at it.
Cool. Okay. So see you next week. And I also take my homework to research about the five hips, 12
But 12,
datus,
12
12
ayatanas.
ayatanas, and
Yeah.
18 datus.
Chat GPT, dude.
Yeah. All right. See you then.
All right, man. You guys have a good day. Have a good week. We'll see you next week, okay? Bye.